Join us as we explore fabulous breakfast food that will melt in your mouth. Hello and welcome to Advanced Radio. We are so happy that you joined us today as we talk about our food article for the month of January. But before we get started, I want to introduce my fellow hosts on the show today. To my right, I have the lovely
Pauline. I'm glad to be here today. Thanks for having me.
Good to have you here. I've heard you talk about different food from around the world, and I know you're going to share that with us today. So I'm looking forward to our listeners and our students also discovering this new food as well.
I'm looking forward to it too. This is one of my favorite topics.
Oh, okay, good. And to my left, I have
Josh. I'm very glad to be in the studio with you today talking about one of my favorite topics as well, food.
How could we go wrong with that, right? And we're here, we're entering the new year. In fact, this is one of the first articles in the month of January, and we're talking about food. We're talking about what we're putting in our stomach. And I wanted to ask you both, what is your favorite breakfast food?
Well, in my family, we have a tradition whenever there's a birthday in our family, we have a big breakfast, and we usually do waffles with fresh berries and whipped cream, as well as homemade hash browns. So that's probably my all-time favorite breakfast.
I forgot to warn our students with today's show that you may get a hungry stomach after this, so you might want to be careful what time of the day you play this recording. What about you, Josh?
Well, being from the United States, I'm very big on the traditional American breakfast, which is a hot breakfast with eggs and potatoes and usually a bacon or something like that. But I also lived in Costa Rica, and in Costa Rica they were very big on a type of rice and beans they call gallo pinto, and that, I have to say, goes pretty well with everything. So I really love gallo pinto.
Wow. I'm just very, a pancake breakfast, like blueberry pancakes or with my scrambled eggs. I'm very happy with that. But of course, not every day, only on special occasions. So, we're going to learn a lot more about different fabulous food today. And we're going to be exploring these different foods from around the world that have amazing food options, whether for your taste or for your health. We're going to explore that today. So let's have a look at our first reading. We're going to look at line 1 on page 10 in the left column and learn about breakfasts from around the world.
Fabulous food. Exploring amazing food options for taste and health. Breakfasts from around the world. One of travel's simplest joys is experiencing breakfast customs around the world. Read on for a sample of some of the most iconic breakfasts to be had. 1. Eggs and kaya toast in Singapore. Singaporean eggs need to be soft-boiled, and the toast better be slathered with kaya jam, a type of thick coconut custard. Add a dash of soy sauce to the eggs, pair everything with some kopi, thick black coffee, and the day is sure to be off to a good start. 2. Chilaquiles in Mexico City. Think of chilaquiles like breakfast nachos. Stale tortilla chips are sautéed with salsa verde and a bit of crema fresca, and topped with poached or fried eggs, queso fresco, and assorted additions like onions, avocado, meats, and radishes. The result is a salty, savory, chewy, slightly crispy dish that's one of the country's most recognizable. 3. Full Irish breakfast in Dublin. In cold and damp Dublin, the full Irish breakfast is the perfect way to combat the chill. This filling spread consists of, at least, fried eggs, bacon and sausage, fried tomatoes, fried mushrooms, toast, and baked beans.
Okay, well, if you're just joining us, we are talking about fabulous food from around the world. And students, just as we get going into our lesson for today, you see next to your vocabulary focus, with each word there is a phonics represented for the words and how to pronounce them. They're called KK phonics, and we just really encourage you to look at that for the pronunciation of the word. These are taken from the American Heritage Dictionary, so you can check that there. And just to help you with your pronunciation of each vocabulary word. Hopefully also today, as we're saying it and as you're hearing the reading, you also hear the pronunciation. Well, we learned that one of travel's simplest joys is experiencing breakfast customs around the world. Now, I know Pauline and Josh, you like to travel, and has that been your experience?
Well, it's been both joy and frustration. Sometimes it's difficult when you have a particular kind of food you're used to in the morning, and that's what really gets you started. And then you're in another country where maybe you don't speak the language or know exactly what's on the breakfast menu. To be able to find something that works for you can be a little bit challenging. But otherwise, when you get to sample something from another country that's really fantastic, you want to have it every day and get as much of it as you can before you won't be able to get it again.
It's very interesting how there are different kinds of breakfasts, aren't there?
It is amazing, the variety out there, and learning about the variety of foods around the world is one of the joys of travel, for sure.
I think as I came to Asia and I learned, sandwiches for me particularly are a lunchtime food, not a breakfast food. But here in Taipei, it can be a breakfast food. And I've learned to embrace that. But I know initially, like you were saying, Josh, it can be quite frustrating because you don't know what to order perhaps instead. Right.
Right, and for me as a vegetarian, it can also be another level of complicated because I don't speak the language and then I have some specific dietary concerns, so I can't just follow the crowd and just point at something because I have a couple specific requirements I'm looking for. So that can be a little bit daunting at first, but when you do find something that's right, it's really exciting to start to have your own favorite version of the local breakfast fare.
And I think it's interesting that can often be the first thing you learn in the language because you want to be able to eat.
Right.
Exactly.
Well, we learn here that we are going to sample some of the most iconic breakfasts to be had. What does the word iconic mean?
Oh, classic. It means emblematic of a particular area. It represents that area almost.
Right. And we see as we go on that a lot of these foods really do show the customs of that place and also perhaps what kind of food is most common in that area. Well, we go to the first country of Singapore. And I love Singapore. My husband is from Singapore, so I'm very familiar with this breakfast. Eggs and kaya toast. Before I knew my husband, I did not know about this breakfast. Now, what is kaya? Kaya is actually a plant, and they take the leaves from the plant and they make that into a jam. Or what we would consider a jam. And they have their eggs slightly soft boiled, right? Now, how do you like your eggs?
I actually hate all eggs.
Well, there you go.
Another one of the difficulties between me and breakfast.
I remember having this conversation with you, Pauline. Yes.
But Josh really likes eggs, so he gets to enjoy some more of the egg foods.
I do really enjoy eggs, and it depends, and not just in custard, but really like hard-boiled, soft-boiled, fried, scrambled. It really depends on the breakfast. Some breakfasts go very well with a softer egg. Some breakfasts go better with a scrambled egg, so it just kind of depends. But if I had my choice, it would be soft-boiled or soft-fried with like a potato or something savory.
Wow, then perhaps you would like this too.
Maybe.
I'm not a big soft-boiled egg person until I tried this. Then I thought, okay, it's appropriate here.
Interesting.
But we do have different kinds of eggs, whether they're scrambled eggs or fried eggs. Here they have a soft-boiled egg, but the toast is also very important.
So I had a question about this. I'm really glad that you've tried it before, because when I was reading it and they said that this is a coconut custard, I would expect that to be sweet, which sounds a little strange with eggs and soy sauce. You know, all that sounds so savory. Is it a mix of sweet and savory, or am I misunderstanding the coconut custard flavor?
So let's have a look at this. The toast better be slathered with kaya jam. So the bread has the kaya jam on top of it. Okay.
Right.
So that's one part of the breakfast itself. And when it says slathered, just to point that word out, it means just to spread it thickly with toast. So that is separate. Now, in another container or a plate, they have the soft-boiled egg.
Oh, I'm glad you clarified this. I was imagining it more like a sandwich. I was imagining that the egg was on top of this bread with the jam, and it just didn't sound like a appealing combination. But that makes a lot more sense to me.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And so what they do is, with their soft-boiled egg, they'll add a dash of soy sauce, right? And then they'll beat it, right, to make it combined. What do we mean, Josh, when we say a dash of something?
Well, a dash is sort of a measure word, but it just means like a real quick little jot of something. So you just like throw it on real quick, not a whole lot.
Right, good. So it's just not a whole lot, just coming out of the bottle quickly. Now it says pair everything with some coffee. Okay, first of all, what does it mean to pair something with something else?
Now, in this particular context, we're talking about using pairing when talking about food. We often talk about pairing dishes with wine or with other drinks, although it doesn't have to necessarily be with a drink. I think you could maybe pair different foods together, like cheeses and fruits. They talk about doing pairings with those as well, that they think complements certain flavors. It brings out a different flavor if you eat them together.
Right. Okay, and kopi, okay, that is Malay, okay, a Malaysian word for thick black coffee. And when I say thick, once you've drunk it, at the very bottom of the cup is a thick layer of the coffee beans still in your cup.
Interesting.
It's great.
Nice.
If you like thick coffee.
Sure.
And so what they do is they combine these together, and the author says the day is sure to be off to a good start. What do we mean by that phrase, off to a good start, Josh?
Well, it means that you're able to really kick the day into a pleasant and high activity level. So you start the day well, you kick the day into a good start.
Good. Okay. And number 2, what do we learn in number 2, Paul?
Oh man, this one makes me so excited just reading about it. Chilaquiles in Mexico City, one of my favorite breakfast foods.
And what is this breakfast food?
You know, it sounds a little strange. They take stale tortilla chips, so ones from the day or two before, but then they saute them, so they put them in a pan and cook them with salsa verde, a spicy salsa, and some crema fresca is sort of like a runny sour cream, would you say, Josh? Yeah. And then a bunch of other possible ingredients, including maybe a poached or fried egg that usually goes on the top after all that. But those stale chips, they soak in that flavor while still staying a little bit crispy. That's why the long list of descriptions at the very end where they say it's sultry, savory, chewy, yet slightly crispy. It's all of these mixes of flavor coming together.
Now, in this, we see a lot of Spanish words, correct?
That's true.
So salsa is a Spanish word, is it?
It is.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, salsa is a Spanish word. It means sauce, basically. But in English, people usually refer to salsa as the very specific kind of like spicy red Mexican salsa that you would put on. But in Spanish itself, it just means sauce, for example.
Oh, okay, okay.
And that's why chilaquiles can also be kind of mixed with a bunch of different sauces, which is the neat thing about it. Depending on where you go, you get different versions of it. They taste slightly differently, but they're all very good.
Okay, so this would be specific to Mexico City, this kind.
Exactly.
Okay, all right. And queso fresco, what is queso fresco?
I'm going to hand that over to Josh because he can give a better definition, I think.
So queso fresco is sort of similar to a soft, like ricotta cheese. It's a little bit firmer than that, and it crumbles. But what it is it's a really sort of mild, nice accompaniment to salsa, to spicy things. So like salsa, salsa verde, those sort of things. It's used on all sorts of things in Mexican food. And it's delicious.
Okay.
So good.
Okay, great. And we see that there are other additions like onions, avocados, meats, and radishes. And we see the result is what, Pauline?
Salty, savory, chewy, slightly crispy dish. That's one of the country's most recognizable.
Okay, so this is very common to Mexico City. And we see there are a lot of things a person can experience when they try this dish as well. Okay.
Actually, the first time I tried chilaquiles was in Costa Rica at a restaurant that was Latin-themed, although I think they got their inspiration from Mexico. All the way through the United States and down into South America, you'll find Mexican-inspired restaurants that will create some of these dishes. When I was in Mexico City, my favorite breakfast was actually the tamales that they sold at a stand right outside of my friend's house, and I could eat those every day for the rest of my life with that salsa verde sauce. Oh man, it was good.
Now tell me, what is a tamale?
So a tamale, it's a meal that's also very traditional in Mexico and Central America. They make it out of corn flour, and it's boiled inside a corn husk and then filled with all sorts of different things. So it can be meat, it can be chicken, it can be vegetables, it can be salsa. It's a little bit intensive to make because you have to wrap everything individually and then boil it or steam it, but they are delicious.
Okay, I'm getting hungry. All right. Now, number 3, we learn about the full Irish breakfast in Dublin. Now, I have not been to Ireland myself or to Dublin, but I do know about its weather. When you watch the movies or when you see things on TV, you realize it's quite cold and damp there. And it says this breakfast is a perfect way to combat the chill. What do we mean with that phrase, a way to combat something, Pauline?
Well, normally combat we think of as like violent fighting, right? But in this case, we're just saying it's a way to maybe prevent the chill or to bounce back from the chill and be able to feel warm despite it.
Right, to deal with it. Right. Okay, yeah, because you can feel like you're fighting the weather sometimes, right? Well, we learned that this is a filling spread. And when we say spread here, we're talking about it contains and consists of many different things. If you see a spread, it's like on a table somewhere, and it will have perhaps many different dishes. Here, they also have a lot. They have fried eggs, bacon, sausage, fried tomatoes, fried mushrooms, toast, and baked beans. Can you eat all of that in one breakfast?
That does sound like quite the spread. I don't know if I could eat all of that.
It's a lot.
I think after eating that much, I would feel pretty full and probably a little bit warm.
You might not need lunch.
You might not need lunch, exactly.
Well, let's go on to learn a few more different breakfasts from around the world with our next reading.
4. Vegemite in Sydney. Aussies refer to the day's first meal as brekkie. It includes staples like eggs and potatoes. However, one thing Aussies enjoy is Vegemite. This brown spread isn't for everyone. It's bitter, salty, and leaves the tongue feeling dry. Still, locals love the stuff and spread it on toast with a bit of butter. 5. Medialunas in Buenos Aires. In sprawling Buenos Aires, medialunas are a staple. Picture smaller, slightly denser croissants that come in sweetened and unsweetened forms. For the full breakfast experience, these are paired with tostadas, jam, butter, juice, and a café cortado. 6. Dutch pancakes in Amsterdam. Known as pannenkoeken, these pancakes come in all manner of sweet and savory varieties. The Dutch version is much thinner than its American cousin, and the crepe-like dish can be topped with almost anything, though the classic apple cinnamon and sugar variety is hard to beat.
Well, if you're just joining us, we're looking at fabulous food and breakfast from around the world. So far, we've tackled Singapore, we've tackled Mexico City, and Ireland, Dublin. But we've got a few places more to travel to. And the first place is Australia, Sydney. We have Vegemite in Sydney. Now, this is familiar to me. I grew up eating Vegemite in New Zealand. It's one thing that we say down under is very specific to our breakfast. We see the word Aussies refer to the day's first meal as brekkie. In New Zealand, we don't really say brekkie. That is definitely still from Australia, and an Aussie is an Australian. They say that their brekkie includes staples like eggs and potatoes. What does the word staple mean, Pauline?
That means a basic. Like, this is a very basic part of their breakfast food. It's not like a optional or occasional extra. This is the basic components of their breakfast.
Right, very good. So I think a lot of this is because there are a lot of Europeans that immigrated to Australia and brought those staples with them. However, one thing Aussies enjoy is Vegemite. Now, Josh, Pauline, have you tried Vegemite?
Actually, the first time I tried Vegemite was in Germany, which was a little bit strange, but it was because I was staying with somebody who had just lived in England, and she was convinced it was the best thing for breakfast. So that was the first time I tried it, and I have to admit, it took me a little while to get used to it, but once I did, I loved it.
And I had never even heard of it before until I married Josh, and he introduced me to it, and I love it too. I'm really glad that he was there to show me how to use it, to not spread it, to not slather it on like the kaya jam that you just like barely do a little bit, right? Because it's such a strong flavor.
Yeah.
But if you just scrape a little bit on and then with some cheese on your bread, oh man, it's so good. We have a jar of it in our refrigerator right now.
I'm so proud of you. Well, Vegemite is a yeast spread. It is very strong. That's why in the next sentence it says, this brown spread isn't for everyone. It is bitter, it's salty, and leaves the tongue feeling dry. Just like Pauline said, you don't slather it on, just put a little bit on. Now, we love it. We love the stuff, and we brag about it a lot, and we spread it on our toast with a little bit of butter. That's the best way to have it. Great toasted bread with that butter combined with the Vegemite. We feel like we're ready to start our day. So we encourage you to try that one, but I would like to look at this next one because we travel to Argentina. We go to Buenos Aires, and what is this food, Pauline?
Well, first of all, I wanted to point out the name Media Lunas. You can get a little clue for what it's going to be based on the Spanish. Media means half, lunas means moons. So these are half moons that's what they're technically called, which actually end up being croissants. So you can see how they're going to look like a half moon.
Right. That makes so much more sense now. Wow. Okay. Now we see that Buenos Aires is sprawling. Josh, what do we mean by that?
Well, anything that's sprawling means that it's really sort of spread out in a real random pattern. So you can sprawl maybe across a couch as a person, but usually it's referred to like growth, something that really sprawled and spread out all over the place.
Right. Okay, good. And here, the medialunas, did I say that correctly?
Yes, you got it.
Yay. Okay, they are a staple. And they, to help people understand them better, they've described them here to say picture. So you have to picture in your mind, imagine in your mind a smaller, slightly denser croissant that comes in sweetened and unsweetened forms.
Do you think you'd like the sweetened or the unsweetened form better?
It depends what I'm putting in the middle of it, right? I like ham and cheese, but I also enjoy, jam. So here they're saying have it with tostadas, jam, butter, juice, and a café cortado. Okay, what is a tostada?
Well, I believe a tostada is just going to be basically like a flat, crispy tortilla.
Okay.
Exactly. Or sometimes it could be like a little bit like a toast. right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, the cortado sounds really good because I love coffee, and it sounds like it's quite strong in coffee. But unfortunately, we're going to have to leave that there and move straight on to Amsterdam in Holland to learn about pannenkoeken. Now, pannenkoeken are the Dutch pancakes there, and they are very sweet, but they can also be savory. And we learned that they're a lot thinner than its American cousin. I think in America you have quite thick pancakes, correct?
We do.
That's right.
Okay, here they're crepe-like. That's why we describe them as being very thin. They're crepe-like. And what can we top them with?
Ooh, it says you can top them with apple, cinnamon, and sugar, which sounds so decadent and delicious.
They are very, very tasty and very delicious. They do all kinds of pannenkoeken in Amsterdam, or in the whole of Holland, in fact. And you can put anything on them. I remember growing up, we would have a pancake night. Right, my parents are Dutch, and my dad would make pannenkoeken. He's the one that would make them, give my mum a break from the kitchen, and we would put all kinds of things on them. We would put peanut butter, we would put meat in them with cheese, you know, you name it. It was the staple part of the dish, and then everything else, the spreads, whatever we put on it, that was what they became. Wow, I don't know about you, but I'm very hungry right now.
Me too.
Pauline?
Oh man, it's killing me.
We hope that through today's lesson you've learned a lot about different breakfast foods from around the world, and even made you curious perhaps to travel to some of these places, or at least go to some of the restaurants to enjoy this kind of food.
That's what I was going to say. You know, if you live in a big city like Taipei, it's amazing the ethnic foods that you have available. If you go search them out, you might just find a few of these dishes in your own city.
And if you do, we would love to hear your feedback. Let us know. You can contact us through our website and email us at studioclassroom.com. And we would love to hear your stories or what your favorite breakfast food is. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Amanda.
And this is Pauline.
And this is Josh.
And